have spent my life looking for a place. A place that takes me to a higher ground. A place to call my own, but share it amongst millions of friends around the world. And now, I've found that place.
It's uplifting.
It's stratospheric.
Take me to trance heaven, right here, right now.
Are you guys ready for a state of trance? Put your hands in the air. Come on.
This is the State of Trance podcast. mixes from the world's hottest producers and DJs straight to your media player. This is A State of Trance podcast.
This week's Tune of the Week, to start off this new episode of the State of Trance podcast, Cosmic Gate Yai. And I was very privileged to hear the new Cosmic Gate album, Start to Feel, which is available for pre-order right now. All I can say is, wow. More tunes from that album coming soon on the show. Still to come on this podcast, music of Andrew Rayel's new album, Dimension, Ali Brown with Rob Van Arden, and a very special classic. But first, a new release on my label Armind, Denis, Kenzo, and Alexandra Badoi, Lifetime Change.
make way for a new tomorrow. Head out of the city, we'll leave before the people say we nearly made it. We can be miracles, we can be the ones. It's all that I can see every time I close my eyes. We can be miracles, we can be the ones. We can be miracles, we can be the we can be miracles, we can be the ones. We can be miracles, we can be the
Find Your Harmony, that is the title of Rayel's debut album that will be released in a couple of weeks. And you can find this team up with Christian Burns on there called Miracles. Some great news landed in my mailbox this week. On episode 317 of this podcast, Brand Hermiller asked me to ask if Leia wanted to marry him. And she said yes. So congratulations to Brand and Leia. And Bianca Nicolai from Chicago writes that she plays this podcast wherever she goes. Right now she's studying for her Calculus 2 final. Gendera from New Delhi in India is also buried in the books right now. Tune into the podcast on repeat, preparing for her big medical exam. Good luck with that. So time for a big uplifting trance track to help you study. Here is the new dimension called Gallaecia.
Trance podcast.
Coming soon on my label Who's Afraid of 138, The Next Page by Alan Brown and Rob Van Arden. I'm in the middle of the Armin Only Intense World Tour, and the last 2 weekends I've visited several cities in North America. This weekend, heading over to Mexico. First of all, Friday the 16th of May, Monterrey at the Teatro Banamex, followed by Saturday the 17th of May, Mexico City. And in honor of this weekend's show, a very special State of Trance radio classic. Here is my team up with Gabriel and Dresden from 2005, dedicated to one of the most famous spots in Mexico, Zocalo.
Thanks for tuning in. To check full episodes of A State of Trance for free, simply visit ArminRadio.com. A State of Trance will return next week.